Tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai haere mai ki te hui o te Asian Legal Network. Ākua nei, ka kōrero a Judge Kiriana Tan, rātou ko Erika Elers, ko Lucia Young, I te pātai he aha te hononga o ngā tangata ahia ki te whenua, ki te ao Māori. He wahine Māori, he wahine ahia, he wahine toa rātou. Nō reira ka kōrero rātou I o rātou mātou a whiako. Engari, e hara tēnei kōrero I te kōrero anake o ngā tangata Māori ahia katoa. Maumahara e tino huhua ngā tangata ahia. Kaua e wareware ngā tangata no ahia tonga he taurau. I te hui ka kōrero hoki a Justice Joe Williams rāua ko matua Meng Foon I tēnei pātai hoki. I tino nui te pātai, mō te kaupapa o te hui kia whakatōmuri te haere whakamoa. Nō reira, ki ngā kai kōrero, tēnā koutou katoa. It is my absolute privilege to be able to present to you, as part of the Asian Legal Network's online hui, a conversation with Judge Kiriana Tan, Lucia Young, and Erika Elers on the question of what is the relationship between Asian peoples and the land and Te Ao Māori. They'll be speaking from their personal experiences of walking in both worlds. And it's important to note that this conversation is not the only one in the history and relationship of Asian peoples and the land here. That there are, for example, our South Asian peoples who have been here and have had a long history as well. At the hui, we'll also hear from Justice Joe Williams and Matua Meng Foon on this question. And it's an important question in order to help navigate the bigger theme of the hui, kia whakatōmuri te haere whakamoa, to walk backwards into our future with eyes fixed on our past. So to those who are speaking at this hui, thank you so much. And to you watching at home, thank you very much. My name is Darren Ui, and on behalf of the organising team of the Asian Legal Network, we hope you enjoy this video.
Ko Erika Elers tōku ingoa, nō te papa i ahau, I te taha o tōku pāpua, nō te waka o tainui ahau, ko Ngāti Kaupapa, Ngāti Maniapoto, Ngāti Haua hoki o ku iwi, I te taha o tōku mama he hapanahi ahau. Kia ora, my name is Erika or Erika. I'm a third year law student at Te Waka, and on my mum's side, I'm half Japanese, and on my dad's side, I have Māori and German whakapapa, and I'm really excited to lead this conversation with the chair and Judge Tan today. So thank you for having me.
Kia ora e te whānau, ko Tararo te maunga, ko Oho te awa, ko Tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Rau kawe te iwi, ko Ngāti te korihe te hapu. Ko Raymond tōku papa, ko Andrea tōku mama, ko Lucia Young tōku ingoa, no haina me Aotearoa o ku tipuna. Kia ora everyone, my name is Lucia. I'm also, like Erika, a third year law and commerce student at Te Waka. And I'm very proud to whakapapa back to Ngāti Raukawa from my father's side and Guangzhou from my mother's side. And like Erika, I'm super happy to be here and tautoko this kaupapa today. Thank you.
Darren, Erika, Lucia, tēnā koutou. He honore he kororia ki te atua. He maunga rongo ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. He whakamoemiti atu ki te atua, whai kororia ki tono ingoa tapu. Ki ngā mati huhu o te wā, haere ki te pō. Rātou te hunga mati ki a rātou, tātou e tau nei ki te tēnei hui, tēnā koutou katoa. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā karangatanga maha, tēnā koutou. Koutou ngō ngā tōpito katoa o ahia, e whai ana I te awo te turi, tēnā au ka mihi. Ki te taha o tōku mama, ko Ngāti Mutuka ngā te ranginui, nai te rangi o ku iwi, ko Urinui Peteri Himo o ku marae. Ki te taha o tōku pāpā, ko Haina o ku tūpuna, ko Penang, Malaysia tōku tūranga waiwai. So, ko Kiriana Tan tōku ingoa, nō reira, huri noa, tēnā tātou. It's a privilege to be here today to have this kōrero with these two beautiful young women in the law. I am Kiriana. I am currently sitting in Manukau District Court as a district court judge with a family and general jurisdiction warrant. As you would have heard from my kōrero, in terms of where I'm from, on my mother's side, she's from Tauranga Moana and Taranaki, and my dad is from Penang in Malaysia. So I am half Chinese and Māori and European as well. Kia ora.
So starting with the first question, can you describe a defining moment or experience, whether that's from your childhood, adolescence, law school, or just when you started working in the legal profession, that helped you realise what it means to be both Māori and Asian?
There probably wasn't one particular moment, and it was probably a journey that I went through through most of my life. Growing up, actually, I didn't think that I was any different to anybody else, because what was my household normal, I thought was everybody else's normal, until I realised as you grew up that it wasn't quite the same, that not everybody grew up in a Chinese takeaway, and parents, you know, worked in that way. And then as I moved through primary school, high school, I became more aware that perhaps my home life was a little bit different. For example, I never thought that my father had an accent. He was just my dad and he spoke to me, and it wasn't till I think when I was a teenager and one of my friends were a bit bolder and they said, "We don't understand what your dad's saying." And I said, "What do you mean? He's speaking English?" And that was the English I was used to hearing with a Chinese accent. So in terms of a defining moment for me, I think it was when I was at university and I accepted it was actually all right to be different and to have these different experiences. But I did go through different ebbs and flows of trying to figure out, well, who am I in this world? Because I sort of fitted in so many different worlds, kind of halfway, but not all the way, as you know, when you're mixed. So it was probably at university when I realised it was okay to be who I was. You know, I sort of got the light bulb moment that it was okay, and I didn't need to try and be more white or more Māori or more Chinese, but, you know, that I appreciated all parts of my whakapapa.
Definitely when I was growing up, I definitely felt the need that I kind of had to conform to one culture more than the other. And I guess Erika and I were just wondering whether you ever felt the need that you needed to conform or pick one culture over the other to kind of fit into the legal profession or even just like society as a whole?
Probably at different times you felt you had to try and just survive in life, right, growing up. But then you realised that when you were trying to be more like one or the other, that they would look at you and you weren't. You know, like for example, language is huge, and so my dad's a Hokkien speaker, and he can understand Mandarin and Cantonese, but he doesn't write Mandarin and Cantonese. But he also knows Bahasa, because that's what's known in Malaysia. But once we came back to New Zealand, he never taught that to me. So when I was with his side of the whānau, I couldn't understand the language, so I always felt like I was not quite there. And you know, sometimes they'd call you banana, right? You know, yellow on the outside, not quite on the inside. And then if I'm on my Māori side, it's like, well, are you a kumara? Because I didn't have the real either growing up, and neither did my mum, or in fact my grandfather or grandmother. But you know, they sort of looked and go, well, you're sort of a little bit different. So I was trying to conform, but I definitely wasn't white, because people would just look at me and go, well, what are you? You know, so there was always at some stages trying to think, oh, well, I need to try and maybe not introduce my friends to my dad because he can't speak English properly. You know, like you go through all those different things at different points in life, and you realise then you have to get to a place of accepting and in fact valuing and knowing the richness of where you come from. But it's a journey.
So this is something that, me and the chair are interested in young law students who, not sure where our career is going to take us just yet, but what do you find the most rewarding and challenging about having a multicultural perspective to your role as a district court judge? So
with that experience, having a wider perspective on the world. So I sit in South Auckland, and so South Auckland is a really multicultural court. You have Māori, Pacifica, Asian, all. You've got quite a multicultural users, particularly in the family court. And so what I find most rewarding is that when someone comes before me and there's a discussion about their family and what's going on, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of get that. In terms of, say, as Asian, our obligations to our families, to the respect that we have for our elders. And even though we might have a different opinion from our parents, there is that level of respect in a particular way in which we need to engage and respond. and it's the same in terms of Māori and whānau and the wider whānau being involved when it comes to the care of children. And we know that it's not just us that's involved. I mean, what I enjoy the most, some of the synergies between being Asian and being Māori, and that's the strength of family and the multi-generational obligations that we all have to each other. I still have my parents down here in Kirikiriroa. We all live on the same property, and I know that my grandmother, my ama over in Malaysia, she always had someone in the whānau looking after her. My mum on her Māori side, my grandmother lived with her, with us for many years after my koro died, and just those synergies. So when I deal with families in the court, well, I might not have the reo, I do have an understanding when there's a discussion about issues about what may be behind why people are doing certain things. It's may not be what those that don't come from that mixed cultural background would understand as normal, or is just how it is. So I think that's a really helpful experience and skill it gives when you're sitting as a district court judge.
Absolutely. Erika and I were just talking the other day about how even though they're two very different cultures at the same time, they kind of intertwine and have very similar values. Like, for instance, both on my Chinese side and my Māori side, we call everyone auntie and uncle, even if we're not even related.
Yep.
And then the last one is, how did your parents meet?
They met in 71. By 75, I was born. Mum, they both sort of add a little bit of colour to how they met. So Mum thought she was perhaps getting a Bruce Lee, because, you know, he was pretty much the man back in those days, and Dad thought he was getting a Māori princess. So whether that's true or not, I'm not entirely sure, but that's their narrative. They probably did meet at a party, let's be honest. And what else were you doing in the 70s at uni?
Yeah, no, I love the Bruce Lee story because my parents met through martial arts. Like, my dad's Māori, mom's Japanese, and they were like, whoa, like, yeah, kind of, so like, I don't know if he thought she was like some Japanese martial art kicking queen or anything, but yeah, definitely bonded over there. And
Yeah, well,
definitely not at a party.
Obviously, over the years, is you have, I think, sometimes the challenges of being a different race, but yeah, also sometimes the challenges of being a woman, a wahine, but then also how to package that up into a strength. But you do go through a journey at different times of different expectations. Some of them may be grounded in an era gone. For example, when you start having children and you're wanting to work and what your role should be within your family, can have its challenges, and you just have to keep pushing through the boundaries. And I've had really good family support, but I had my first son when I had been practicing just for a year. And there were different discussions with different whānau members about, whether I should be going back to work or not. And it was like, well, hell yeah, because I just spent 5 years at university.
Yeah.
So of course I am. And I can also, be a mother and a lawyer and still do that. I just need to arrange my whānau arrangements to have the support to do that. Sorry. I was going to say, but women can do anything. Especially, we can do anything, and bring it on. If you give us a challenge, we'll take it head on. yeah, and especially Māori Asian women, we don't, you can't hold us down.
I'm not sure if this is the same with Chinese culture, but like in Japanese culture, women are definitely more like submissive, and seems like it's changing. But like, yeah, it's been interesting. Like, from hearing from my Japanese family to kind of, they wanted me to pursue my like law degree, but also like be open to the fact that I could be a housewife. And then whereas my Māori family like, no, like strong wahine, let's go, like get that degree, like go help our people. So
I had I had a fire at school, and she kind of aided me in my journey, my te reo journey, as well as like feeling confident in my identity. So I think for me that's kind of been very influential into like how I feel as though I intersect between those two.
I think we can all agree that there are like beauties and flaws in like both of our cultures, but something I really admire about Māori culture, and I can't speak for all Māori, of course, but we have this mindset that if you have Māori whakapapa, then you're Māori. But in Japan, despite the fact that I'm, you know, technically 50% Japanese, I'm very much seen as, like, we call it gaijin, like foreigner. So it's very weird because I kind of get told in New Zealand that you're Asian, you're Māori, you're like, you know, wherever you whakapapa to, that's who you are. And then I go to Japan, and it's funny, I get called like the Polynesian. That's something I want, particularly Japanese culture, and from the conversations I've had with my Asian friends, they have that same sense of like discrimination, I guess, from their Asian culture. But I hope that, like, how Māori people have this mindset of if you whakapapa back to the land, then that's who you are. I would really like that, because I do feel like quite an outsider in Japan, which is kind of sad.
Well, I think that there's going to be a close relationship. I think the first point is that for those of us that come into New Zealand, either Asians coming into New Zealand or have been here for a while, is I think it's important to acknowledge tangata whenua and actually the place that Māori have in Aotearoa's the treaty partner first here in the land. And so that when we come and if we respect that relationship, then we can build together what Aotearoa might look like. I always say that my kids are kind of the future of where I see New Zealand being, and that is that their father has Māori whakapapa as well. Cook Island Māori, they've got a mother who's Chinese Māori Pākehā, so they're sort of from the Pacific, Southeast Asia, tangata whenua, and back, you know, in England, and that's where the future is. But what does it mean? It means that we need to ensure those coming over, that we respect those relationships so that we're not trampling on the mana of mana whenua, and getting any relationships we develop on the right basis, so that we're not repeating the past actions of those that have come before us in terms of how Indigenous peoples have been treated. And so if we get that understanding correct, and that mutual respect and value for the different places that we have here in Aotearoa, then I see a bright future for us to be able to build, where we will have more children who come from a mixed heritage and who can then stand up and proudly say, this is what it means to be a Kiwi, this is what it means to be part of Aotearoa. I'm Māori, I'm Asian, I'm Pākehā, I'm Pacifica, and it's all good because I understand the history of my country and I understand the future of where it's going. So, but we need to come from that starting point of acknowledging tangata whenua first, as opposed to perhaps a historical narrative where that hasn't been acknowledged or appreciated.
Thank you so much for spending your Sunday afternoon with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for spending time. It's definitely been great for Erika and I to just kind of just have someone to like look up to and be like, that's very relatable, that like she understands, and it's been great. It's not every day that you get to kind of find people where you can have these discussions with in a quite a raw perspective, and it's hard for people to understand sometimes. So thank you for sharing.